Broadcasting live from the command center located in Jacksonville, Florida, this is Military Witnesses to UAP. I am your host, Shannon Scott. And backed by popular demand, located deep in the Missouri woods, my right-hand man, Rob Heatherly. We both have assumed the duties and responsibilities of continuing the conversation. So, buckle up, hold my beer, hang on, and let's get started with today's briefings. Hey, I want to welcome everybody to another edition to Military Witnesses to UAP. Today is a very special episode. Why? Because not only do you have yours truly, we also have, bam, Rob Heatherly. We also, wait a minute, but wait, there's more. We got our man, Jim Quirk from the Quirk Zone. Say hi, Jim.
How you doing, everybody?
I got to get my applause going. Wait a minute. Here it is. There we go. And last but not least, our man, Shane Frakes. How you doing, Shane?
Pretty good. Glad to be back.
I am living the dream, guys. I've always dreamed of having my own talk show. And look at there. There it is. I got, not only do I have my own talk show, I have 3 other co-hosts. I mean, it's a dream come true. And I have like no money going out to pay you guys to do this. This is all.
Wait, what? I gotta go.
This is Oh man. But Jim, you've been busy besides losing games. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Jim just got off the horn doing a live show. Man, look, at least your team went to the Super Bowl. We were rooting for you, but hey, I guess we lost too. You know? The Jags were this close. At least that we lost to Kansas City as well, right? So, bam.
Well, I'll tell you what. If it turns out next year that it's the Eagles versus Jacksonville, and the Eagles lose that, you first lose to Andy Reid and then lose to Doug Peterson, that would be really tough.
Oh,
that would really be bad.
Yeah. So we get a football break around here, right? No Pro Bowl, right? How many months, Shelly? Shelly has a countdown. She is a huge football fan. We need some. Hold on. I got to get some of this music in the background. Let's see. See how many seconds or minutes here. She's looking it up. She can't find it. There's many months of football, 200 something days. So hey, that's 2/3 of the year. Okay, no football for a while. Rob?
Yes.
Hi, how are you?
And what you up to, Rob?
Wyatt, I am rolling.
You're rolling. I haven't talked to you much today, man. Usually we're just chatting. But you've been under
immersed.
A car.
I've been immersed today watching the news unfold to see how this played out.
Yeah.
Been quite a wild ride in the media today with the Pentagon, White House, Congress, the whole gamut. They got briefed today, classified briefings. So yeah, it's been
brief. Well, start from the beginning, Rob. To those who have no idea, they don't even stick around and watch the TV, or maybe they don't know what you're talking about. Start from the beginning. What's going on?
Well, in light of the recent developments with the Chinese spy balloon that transited the United States for about 10 days, and then they got a lot of heat at the White House for that. So they went back and looked at sensor data and turned up their sensors and found that there were a few more Chinese balloons in the last few years, and then they found a whole lot more than they bargained for. And with the new sensors up,
are you telling me we've had other balloons from China crossing our southern nation?
Yeah. This started in the Trump administration. No, it didn't start there. It started way before that. Maybe with the Chinese balloons it did on this version of them. But they said that since 9/11 they found 50 anomalous tracks. Imagine 50. Ooh, no. no, there's a lot more. They haven't gotten data from NORAD.
Right.
They didn't say exactly where they sourced their data, but we know where they didn't source them. And long story short, when the pilot Friday morning sent pictures back, they had a knee-jerk reaction and decided that they were going to. I imagine they put out the word that no more anomalous craft cross our borders, and didn't know that UFOs truly existed. And when the pilot went up, sent back pictures, and they're like, no idea what it is, but shoot it down. And then they found another. They started panicking because it's new to them, and I can appreciate that. When they first move out of the city, the country, you get all kinds of critters that you never dreamed were there, and then once you kick on the lights at night, boom, you get a whole yard full.
Can I just play? Let me play. I love playing devil's advocate. Let me try to get this mindset here. Are you telling me that the way we got things set up, there's a filtration system to that this anonymous stuff may not be alerted on, and this basically, this is a deficiency of alertness to where people are going, wow, I'm very interested in this stuff crossing our nation, including a restricted airspace, right? So now we've got a spotlight on it, and then we're finding out this is a problem. This has been going on for a while. And what other problems are we finding? We're finding that there's a filtration system, right? And the filtration, we might want to look into that, because it's a pick and choose things. Maybe the filtration, maybe they don't even identify anything that doesn't. If it's not squawking, FFI, maybe they're not even bringing it up because they know that's Leroy and friends, right?
Those in the know, they don't worry about it. They don't catalog it. I dare say it goes into the lost in space recordings database somewhere that gets buried, and then they can, they may even turn them off, that sort, and find those, because they are tasked with, like NORAD, with bombers and ICBMs. The same goes for the radar systems on either coast. They aren't calibrated, nor are they tasked to look for anything other than that, because they don't want to overwhelm the system and keep their techs just focused on just what they're supposed to be looking for, nothing else. These UAP have not been a problem. And the flow movers with Chinese balloons, they found a loophole and exploited it. And there's a good chance the other two are going to turn out to be pseudo UAP that were spoofed by another country that's trying to sneak in what looks like non-human technologies, but they're not. It may turn out to be just those four, but
might be a funny. It's almost like a gag, right?
Yeah, so,
I mean, what can you be sending over here to really get our attention?
Yeah, but it triggered a chain reaction to where the White House didn't know this was true until they got briefed on it, and then they went, basically, I don't want to use that, that kind of language, so we can just say a large exclamation mark. And why haven't they been briefed on this before? Trotted it over to the Defense Intelligence Committees, and then it rolled downhill from there, and it ended up the culmination today of giving a classified briefing to all of Congress, all of the White House, and I dare say probably DOD wide, to where all of them know that there are non-human craft now. And some people on Twitter were asking today that previously we had senators and people going on the record out of the military and other agencies and stuff that were members of Congress and things, but weren't on the intelligence committees, that were using, basically saying that, we've got, there's a good chance these are aliens, non-human tech and all this. And some people were asking today, after they were briefed, why did they stop using those terminologies and left it with just that, non-state actors and such as that? From everything I know of being acquainted with people with clearances and getting classified briefings and holding information, If they haven't been briefed on something, they can speak on speculation. But once they're briefed on it and it's official and it's part of the official briefing, then they can't use those words. So it's kind of a no-brainer why they're not using that language now after they've gotten the briefing, because they're not allowed to. If it weren't true and it didn't exist, then yes, they'd still be saying it, but they're not. That is telling in itself.
Yeah, I heard it sometime during the day that the amount of money that China has used to get this kind of response, it sure is a big bang for a little buck, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're making us I guess stand on our toes or something. Make sure we're doing our job.
I'll also add that, it almost seemed like what they were trying to do, they got their hand caught in the cookie jar. So they're trying to say, look, see, arrow's working. We got this balloon, and we would just tell you if it was UAP and this and that.
Yeah.
So
We'll mitigate it. Don't worry about it.
You see, we're
Trust
working
us.
properly, and we're going to. But it was almost like, stop, wait. You have this that can do this, and these filters. So, and then they were like, oh, so they're trying to explain it away, like, look, like a whole feigned transparency, like, look, see, we got the balloon, this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And these things were UAPs, but it was a balloon. We said UAP. We use the terminology, so we're playing the game, and all of a sudden they realized they screwed themselves. And then everybody, I know I've heard a lot of reps say cover up, use the word cover up.
Yep. And they didn't, Arrow didn't come out with this. The administration didn't come out with it. What made the Chinese balloon news come out is that people on the ground, civilians in the northern states, were seeing this giant freaking thing floating through the sky, and they were calling, the officials up, hey, what the hell is that thing? And that got, they kept calling up the chain until it finally got the attention of the Pentagon and such, and then they became aware of it. So it wasn't our illustrious Arrow and our, super sleuth apparatus that are on the ball with this. They dropped the ball, and they may have even known it was traversing, but were they going to say anything if it weren't sighted by civilians? We don't know. They passed before and no one said anything. I mean, you would think that they would see something that's 200 feet tall.
Can anybody remember the last time we actually, as a nation, had a incident where something was flying over and we acted the way we did for the China incident? I mean, I'm 53. You guys are much older than me. I know Jim and you guys are like, I'm like 53.
Yeah, I'm
I know you guys
95.
are much older than me. But do y'all remember back when you were watching Howdy Doody and Leave It to Beaver? Did anything break over the television? Say, hey, we got this big balloon that we don't have no idea where it's going.
Just pterodactyls. Just pterodactyls. That's it.
That's never happened. It has never happened. But you think about how many times we have detected things in the sky that we couldn't tell what it was. Just watch Lou's Unidentified on the History Channel, for crying out loud. How many things on there?
This whole thing to me is one big giant trick. I think this was pre-planned. I believe that there's things floating over the United States and Canada and the entire continental North America, all over the place, all the time. And somebody decided at some point, I don't know, probably last year sometime, there's definitely some sort of a group within the Pentagon. I don't know who it is, but there's some faction within the Pentagon, obviously, who wants to try to bury the alien extraterrestrial talk. And to me, this was all pre-planned. Hey, we're going to put on a show for them. We're going to show them it's nothing. In fact, one of the stories that I saw over the weekend was from ABC News, or I think it was from CNN, actually. It was on an ABC News channel. They actually stated that some of the pilots, right, they it infected their sensors, it didn't have any visible means of propulsion. Like, I can't believe all of a sudden the Pentagon will be throwing statements out like that when you see all these documents on UFOs that they've been releasing. When you see like the black vault gets them and they're all blacked out, that doesn't tell you nothing, and all of a sudden they're going to say, there was no visible means of propulsion, and they were that was affecting their sensors, and now they're going to tell you that, oh yeah, see, it was just it's just prosaic, it's just conventional kind of spy devices, or maybe an inflatable device, maybe from China, and yeah, it caused some of our pilots to get all mixed up and see, this is what happens over the years. So see, there's no real thing like extraterrestrials. To me, this whole giant thing, they've been doing this kind of stuff since Roswell, since the balloons. After this is going on for decades. They went to the Roswell playbook. That's what they're doing. It's a trick.
Technically, they could have set up three. After the Chinese balloon, we can't dismiss the possibility that some asset, like you said, of the United States or otherwise, sent up pseudo UFOs that have a human explanation, but they're trying to make it look like it weren't, and to be able to pin everything on that, like you were saying, that they're all prosaic and human, and just made it. They're fake UFOs, just like they faked the anomalous craft and the lasers that switched off all our nuclear ICBMs. That was just a kid with a kite spoofing us, according to the Pentagon, evidently. And some kid figured out how to code them and turn them on while they're at it. And here and Russia, by the way. There's a 700-page book by Hastings, UFOs and Nukes, that if not for the faint of heart to read, that explains how this has happened dozens of times to our nuclear facilities. And I think the majority, if not all of them, at some point have been affected by that. I was shocked.
Yep.
So, we've got crashes that went back to 1941 that are on the record of military documented cases being picked up. That's what Jacques Vallée wrote the book on with his latest of Trinity, where they recovered 2 craft there before Roswell, and there was, I think that was 1945. So,
yeah.
And then to say that Roswell, that buck privates went out with their Jeeps and didn't know the difference between UFOs and weather balloons and human dolls that didn't start getting flown until 52, except that this wasn't buck privates. This was the elite officers and the top scientists and stuff that worked on the nuclear bomber squadron. They were all professionals and, I dare say, intellectuals to be on that unit. So for them to mistake a weather balloon for a UFO craft and to have put that in the press for the first 12 hours, it's just ridiculous.
This is a paragraph. I'm sorry, Shane, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to read a paragraph from this book. It's called Roswell, the Ultimate Cold Case, closed by Donald Schmidt and Thomas Carey. And I was actually talking about this during my earlier show today. And I just want to read this just from page 36. And this is about what the final wooden stake through the heart of Roswell back in 47, like right after it happened. It says here, the final wooden stake into the heart for the Roswell was administered on July 10th and 11th in the form of numerous balloon launch photo ops at selected bases around the country, orchestrated by the Air Force and the U.S. Signal Corps. Balloon launch demonstrations designed to impress and convince the press and the American people that these mundane balloon-borne devices known as Raywin radar targets, consisting of one rubber balloon and one 6-sided tinfoil radar target, were responsible not only for the Roswell incident, but also for all the flying saucer hysteria sweeping the nation. It worked. That's what's going on here in my mind. It's the same kind of playbook. They're using the same playbook that they've been using for over 75 years now.
I agree. And as a matter of fact, Sign, Grudge, the Condon report was ridiculous. He didn't even. So one of the things that really pissed me off whenever the first congressional hearings came out, I was fired up. Like, why didn't anyone ask where are the previous records? If they weren't important and, all these other things, why didn't anyone, the Condon report, they were intentionally destroyed. You only destroy things you want to keep out, right? No one asked that question. And I was like, why? Because first thing I would have asked is, why did the government destroy particularly all these sets of records? I mean, they went out of their way. No one asked that damn thing, right? And so say it's a cover up, regardless of how we want to portray it. I want to just read something real quick from the Senate Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell. How do we get in a position where the greatest nation in the world doesn't know what is traversing our own airspace? How long has the domain awareness gap that Northcom Commander General Van Hark has identified existed, well, at least since Lou has said it existed correctly. And that's one of the things that the skeptics need to get their head out of their ass. That's essentially what he's saying right here. Lou's been talking about when he says threat, he's saying exactly what he means right there. And he's been saying that's what we should be looking at it as.
Mhm.
So Lou from 2017 on, guys, has been saying this. So anyone out there that's been head up their butt, right, saying this, that, or the other, minority leaders talking exactly the same way right now. We should have been paying attention from a security perspective, no matter what it was, balloon or not. But he ends with Jennifer, he identified existed, and what was the department done about it? The commander-in-chief owes the country some answers. And then it's going to get into politics because what did Trump do? But they're all to blame because, again, my point with this was that's what Lou's point was with this was. This was really, I know it was about UAP, but it's more about United States security should be taking this seriously enough to at least say, hey, something's here. We need to identify or say because it's a threat. But that's what he's admitting to right here. So Green Street, eat that shit.
Yeah, this is what led up to 9/11 and why they developed the Department of Homeland Security, because they had all these different intelligence groups and none of them were talking to each other. And now we have the same thing over again, where we have all these intelligence groups and these dark silos, and none of them are talking to each other because they're all SAP programs. And if you don't have a need to know, you can't look in our SAP. Stay in yours. And we don't exist. Don't look over here. And that's why Lou had to resign. And you know, I can't understate the significance of this. What Lou set out to do to get the whole of government aware of this potential threat of this blind spot that would be across the entire DOD, Congress, and the White House. That was mission accomplished today when they got the classified briefings. They all know the truth now, and that's what he was trying to accomplish before he had to resign, because no one would listen to him. Him and Chris Mellon were trying for about 6 months, according to the article that Chris put out today, trying to get this done before Lou had to resign. And this was the only way that he could do it without violating his NDA, folks. He continued his oath of enlistment by having to resign and didn't violate his NDA by violating the chain of command. It's the only way he could do that and to save face and not violate his promise to the American people. So I can't understate how important this is today, that his goal that he set out to accomplish in that phase has finally taken place. And now they're all on board, and I dare say all these people in Congress that have families and friends and constituents that aren't in Congress that have been wanting answers forever, they're dying to tell them the answers. And I am sure that they are pressuring the White House to say, look, we're going to give you X amount of time to get out in front of this and tell the American people, because we have the authority to declassify this and tell them ourselves. And it would be a very big embarrassment for your administration that you sat on this and lied to the American people. Once you were briefed, you still didn't tell the truth.
Exactly. And you had mentioned crash retrievals earlier. Look, I've always been under the impression that we've had tech and bodies, right? But not only that, the more I actually research and find stuff, the more I'm under the impression we've had lots of tech and bodies, and they've known and done this same thing, like we were just talking about, over and over. Like right now, I'm looking at that P research paper that you and I had talked about, Rob, and like 1884, Dundee County, and then you got 1897 Aurora. Then you have a flap from 1947 all the way down to like 1948. Series of 6 crashes that's in New Mexico. 6 bodies, 4 bodies, 4 bodies, 12 bodies, 5 bodies, 14 bodies, ridiculous stuff. Aztec, all these places, right? And then, you know, and you can kind of toss it aside a little bit. But I mentioned this the other day in our podcast, right? As I go through these, and I'll send this to you guys if you guys want. And matter of fact, if I knew how to share it, I would share it right now. But I have no clue, right? So it mentions Marcin W.M. Cooper. We talked about this the other day, and you guys know Cooper. He writes about an underground alien civilization that I used to laugh about, you know, because behold the pale horse. Now I mentioned the other day, right here, and some of these, as people go through, I actually on Twitter, and didn't get in arguments, they'd say things like, "Oh, bull crap! I would have heard about one in New York in 19." Let's see, let me find it. In 1952, on the 7th, I would have heard about it in New York. Anti-aircraft guns at Morningside Park fire and destroy a hovering UFO. MPs recover large fragments of UFO. Barbara Hudson of New York City. Look it up. You'll find stuff about an incident that it may not say UFO. You'll find stuff about an incident where they shot something down over and over. And it may not state because, again, look at the other day, this pissed me off. Look at the journalists right now that laughed when someone said UAP, UFO just a day ago when someone brought that question. They were worse than that years ago. So they're going out of their way not to say it in these papers. But if you go through and look at some of these, you're going to start finding lots of things that were shot down, crashed, and bodies. And they may not say it because, again, they had to have careers and stuff. But I'm blown away because it was only 2 years ago. I from my experience, I realized, oh, crap, this is real. And really bothers me that we've been being, not just been, but some people have been driven insane, killed themselves, ghostlighted by your own government. They've known for what reason. Why did they keep it a secret? Was it ontological
because
shock?
of a 75-year institutionalized program of disinformation and psyops against the American people to not let the truth out. Anybody that had accurate or credible testimony or information or evidence was discounted, ridiculed, humiliated, and yes, some to the point where they committed suicide, and others suicided themselves, jumping out of windows backwards, or shot themselves 3 times in the back of the head, things of that nature. Yeah, they've institutionalized it. Now they're going to have to answer for it because Congress is tasking Arrow, and all eyes are on them to go back to all the data and for the Air Force to explain why they ran that psyops. And I dare say they need to inquire why they appointed a colonel that was her whole career was psyops, that wrote the paper in 2003 and made the statement that you cannot separate psyops and public relations. They are intertwined, and you cannot separate the two. That's against the law in the United States to run a psyop on the American people. So she's acknowledged and admitted that she cannot separate her duties as PAO from psyops. So we need to look into that.
Rob, this isn't the first time you've actually mentioned this, but the thing is, you can't say it enough. Really, we almost need to say it on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I'm tired. I'm tired of the idiocy of the media. I mean, the mainstream media, all of it. I mean, it doesn't matter which one it is. I mean, you look at it, all they're doing is whatever the Pentagon tells them, that's the story, and that's the end of it. Yeah. There's no okay, when Watergate happened, there was a big investigation. They put their best reporters on it at the Washington Post, and they uncovered corruption. But they're not doing it here. It's like I'm not sure if they're just really stupid, or if maybe the people running these empires, these media empires, have been instructed to play stupid. I don't know. Something's stupid. I mean, something's going on, because how could all this evidence be compiled at this point, and yet the media is still sitting there snickering about this? Are none of these people read any books or I mean, what's going on here? That's what bothers me about this.
I think the alternative media is out there. We have our friend like Christopher Sharp, who's a good friend of this show, that he's doing an outstanding job.
He's good. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, I mean, the guy just comes out with stories left and right, and he's a fan of this show, most importantly. So, yeah. Yep.
Can I also add? We also got another super reporter in our corner from a very famous UFO paper, Roswell Daily Record. So my co-host for my other show, he's going to be doing articles about UAP and stuff, taking this seriously. That guy right there. I know that's Toby right there who said that. So fortunately, he's going to be covering this topic, not shying away like these idiots. He had a question lined up, ready to ask. I wish I could find it right now, but the big paper's got it right. Oh, did I tell you guys?
No.
I'm so proud. I'm like a proud dad. Toby actually got invited to the Pentagon briefing, was there, like one of the few people there. It was a journalist there. I'm like, what?
I'm sure he's not the only one. Rob, did you get your invite?
No,
I thought he was
What?
messing with me. I'm like, what the hell?
What?
So
You
Roswell
got an
Daily
invite,
Record.
didn't
So
you?
he's going to be writing articles about the topic.
Jim, I didn't
He's
get
gonna-
my invite.
Yeah, me neither. I didn't get one either, Toby. Thanks a lot. So Toby
Jeez.
just jumped right ahead of the line. It was funny because of that, he's been working on this subject hard behind the scenes as far as doing articles about UAP med and things. And I was like, that's cool. We got people in our corner. Chris Sharp, amazing. He's actually been cutting it on the edge of this, like tip of the spear the whole time, right? The whole time.
White House, hello, White House. Write our names down, okay?
Do you know who I am?
That's right. That's right.
I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal.
And that's why we should get our invites. I mean, look at all the stories we broke last year. It was,
They don't. The mainstream does not know how to ask questions on this. They just because they've never why they need to sit down and read books like UFOs and the national security state. I mean, then that way they would have an understanding of what's been going
Richard
on for
Goldman.
yeah. I mean, why isn't Richard here's what bothers me. I just saw again, it was a couple weekends ago, Neil deGrasse Tyson, because he shows up on all these different channels. He's on CNN and he's talking about aliens. Oh, I need more proof. It's like, well, what are you talking about? Didn't you read any books? You didn't know about the physical trace evidence. I mean, there's just so much evidence now that's compiled. It's undeniable at this point, and yet we're still playing this stupid game, and it's just very tiring.
Just because somebody's good at a certain job doesn't mean they're an expert in something else. We might as well have a top chef from one of these cooking shows come on to the air, to the news, and go, "Hey, there is nothing. I mean, there's nothing to do
We'll
this.
bring the
There's nothing to
Swedish
do
chef
with this
on.
meal, and there's nothing to do." Yeah.
What we
bring
can't
the
do
Swedish
is
chef.
You know
what
what's
they
wild?
believe in private,
What's up?
what they believe off the air and what they attest to on the air can be two different things, because you have to remember, when a television program is looking for a particular slant, they have their go-to people of who they can go to for a specific narrative. They already know what they're going to say. They're paid to say it, and it doesn't matter what they know. They get paid to be a skeptic, and they're going to be a skeptic for that show, or they don't get work. That's where Mick West and deGrasse Tyson are the most famous, because they are the sellouts and holdouts that make money from this. And if they flip on it then they stop getting those jobs.
Yeah, I mean, the only time he honestly needs to be coming on is when they have a James Webb telescope image that comes out, and he could do some explanations or some theories. He could talk about that. He's knowledgeable about that. But when it comes to this subject, he has nothing to do with it.
You know what's really wild though about this whole thing? People, they're just now waking up to something we don't understand is here.
Yep.
Take it.
And-
You can argue about where it's from, what it is, all day long, whatever. Wait till they start shaking their heads and saying, "Well, if that is real and they've been saying it's not, what about abductions? What about
Chain reaction?
Yep.
yeah?" Then that's how my ontological shock from my experience unfolded in that direct. I mean, it was literally as soon as that happened. What else have they been saying? No, or this doesn't exist, or the world says can't.
I went
precog
where I
RV, all these
started.
crazy things, right?
Yeah, those who know me, like Dave, that's in the chat, that he's advised me. The guy has been in this for decades. He's brilliant. He's been burned out several times over in the UFO field before I even entered it. He gave me some very good advice, and he did tell me they eat their own before I ever stepped into this arena, and he was right. But I started off about 2 years ago going down this and realizing, okay, I bought the Roswell book. I started there, and Skinwalkers, and decided that, okay, the Skinwalker thing and Hitchhiker Effect, that's complete BS, but at least I can sort out the nuts and bolts of this. So the craft sightings that were there and the possible interdimensional holes that can be explained by science, but I completely dismissed when I started this all the other aspects that weren't explainable, but it was a natural progression as I became more and more immersed. There was it would, like with ancient history, the rabbit hole never stops. How far you go into this and find out what's real and what's probable, it completely changed from 2 years ago to now. of what I believe and what I know, and with a high probability, completely different. I would have told you 2 years ago that I'm crazy if I heard myself talking now 2 years ago, I'd tell
Yep.
myself now, you need to go check into a mental hospital because you're completely lost your bonkers here. No, I've done the research. It's too compelling to dismiss. And like Christopher Mellon said, the ET hypothesis best fits the explanation according to what we know. And that's where it's at.
Well, I could tell you, now, of course, you guys know my story. I mean, it started for me at a young age. I mean, it was like 1977. I was like 8 years old, almost 9. I mean, one of these beings was in my room. I mean, I had no idea that even was even possible. And it took me like 10 years at least to realize that it was a freaking alien. I thought it was the devil. I had no idea what was going on. So I saw it. This thing was in my room. I mean, it was not human. This is real.
Mhm.
All these people that, and that have these, it might seem wild to somebody out there who didn't experience it, but if you do the research and there's just too many people now. We're at a point now. It's like, again, we're living in this pretend reality where it's like nobody wants to, like the whole world needs to accept this, and we need to move on from there. And I want more. I have a lot of questions about this, and I am certain that our government, they have some information. They be able to provide, fill in some of the blanks anyway. Not all of them, of course. How could anybody be able to fill in all the blanks? But they would have like information about, the bodies and the craft and where they think they might come from. There might be some little tidbits here, but I just don't like this idea of it would be like say centuries ago when the earth was flat and some people knew it was round, or some people realized it was round, but yet there was a whole bunch of people that went on for another 100 years or so saying it's flat, and then it's like the same thing now. I mean, it's just crazy. I don't like it. I don't like what's going on. I don't like this fake reality, like, and make fun, and some people still make fun of it. They laugh about it, they snicker. It's just I know it's real. I saw one of the things.
This whole life experience that we're going through reminds me of the fictional movie John Carpenter's They Live. Does that remind?
Yes,
does this
that true.
remind you of it?
Yeah,
it's like a reality, and nobody else understands it.
Yeah,
unless you're looking through these glasses. Ours is research, right? But yeah,
well, what troubles me is though sometimes they lump in people who believe in this with like psychopaths and stuff like that. I saw that I remember I did a podcast like last year sometime where some debunker like basically lumped UFO people in with like murderers and things like that. And it's like, come on. I don't like that.
Remember, one of Galileo's students was burned at the stake when he proposed that the Earth was round, not flat, and that was heresy. And it's not. We're going to look down the road, maybe 50 years, and history's going to look back on people and see that how. Scientists even believed that the moon was made of cheese in the early 1900s. That is science fact back then. But they're going to look back at this era and imagine the time that people didn't know that there were non-human presence on our planet, the same way they look at flat Earth, and that the Earth is not the center of the universe. It's going to be the same fundamental paradigm shift of that, because we're going to find out that it's more, it's evolving now in rapid succession. And this is going to catapult it with what just happened, that it's more like Star Wars out there than the Waltons. And that's a terrifying prospect for a lot of people. And unfortunately, the government is tremendously responsible for that, because they could have come out with this, 50 years ago or more, and they chose not to.
Yeah.
Did you, I don't know if you have the ability to put on the screen, the original 1947 Roswell crash paper that showed them kind of holding all that stuff?
Yep.
Roswell Daily Record, the ones that put that out.
Yep.
Toby works for him. Did you see what he just put in the comments? I didn't know we were allowed to announce it, but he did announce it. So apparently I'm going to. I'm going to get a byline. I'm going to be able to write papers with him, articles for the paper. Roswell Daily Record, the one that broke the original crash, about this topic from an experiencer, veteran, that type of perspective.
Outstanding.
I'm just like, because it gives a perspective, that isn't often heard. And I'm so grateful to it. I didn't know we were allowed to announce it, but he put it in the chat.
Who's,
So I was
who's
gonna.
the person behind that writing it?
That's Toby. He actually works there at the Roswell
Okay.
Daily Record. So,
Okay.
and I get to, I'll get a byline, and so we're going to work on articles together about this topic. So if you guys ever have anything you think is important about it, let us know, because you were talking about journalists like Christopher Sharp, George Knapp, you got Corbell, you got all these other people. We're all in on this, so obviously. And veterans are important, mental health, all this kind of things. And it gives me a platform to speak to these things. So it's cool.
I was
Thanks,
talking
Toby.
to a guy on UFO Man's channel a while back. I can't remember the guy's name right now. But
Probably
he
him,
had
Toby.
No,
RDR?
no, it's a guy with really, really good hair, dark hair. Really educated, decent guy, huh? He's from the northern states, but he comes to Roswell a heck of a lot. He's very invested in a UFO museum or something down there. I can't remember his name. It's a one-syllable first name, and it doesn't matter. But I had a very good conversation with him on UFO Man's channel, and we had talked about how he was trying to get information from the people at Roswell, and they had talked to some locals privately, and they had talked about what they knew. So they set up a town hall meeting where they thought that they were going to get a whole bunch of people turn out and share their stories, but nobody turned out, including the guy that helped them set up the meeting at the town hall. And they were wondering why. I said, because they have been institutionalized to fear anybody that came forward. Their families were threatened. They were threatened. Lives have been ruined because they tried to come out with the truth, and that is still alive and well. And I pointed out to him, he's written several books on Roswell, and and I have no malice against him for this, but a lot of people have profited off of Roswell and the suffering of the local people. They're not getting some of them may be profiting off of that, but most of them are not. But there is a institutionalized trauma and PTSD from that event that is still in place now. If they want to help out the people of Roswell, they need to go in there with the mental health people and the military, and let them know that it's okay to talk about this now, because they are still being silent because they're still living in fear. Like our guy Jonathan with the 97 crash in Peru, that's still terrified. They don't know that it's okay to talk about it now. They need the mental health and the okay from the military to know they can talk about this now. They need some healing. People are profiting off of them, but they're still suffering from it.
You know what's wild? I don't know how much of this I can say. So Toby's announced, I'm going to be one of the speakers at the Roswell Incident Festival in July. I'm getting to talk about my experience and the shit I survived. Just another platform, and I'm grateful as hell. But on top of that, because of my experience, it's wild for me to think of. I'm on this podcast. I've met you guys. My other all this has only happened after my experience, and then I'm working on my documentary just about that, in the hopes of veterans, wounded warrior, that type of stuff, because there's so much shit that goes unnoticed that you guys know that others don't. And then on top of that, as an experiencer, as a researcher, you got unique perspectives, and it's kind of cool, because most of the people don't realize that PTSD can happen from an experience. Having that experience can mess you up, right?
Yeah.
You may not think it's this. Doesn't mean it's bad. It just may mess you up, right?
Yeah.
So
all the stories that I've heard, I've never seen anything except for what witnesses have shown me on videos and photos and the stories. I know that Jim talks about Preston Dennett, right? He's got how many stories has that guy? How many stories has that guy have, right? And the thing is, being the investigator that I am, I'm always looking for something. Just what is there any patterns to any of these stories? And there's a crap load of patterns. One of them is tele whatever, talking in their heads. Telepathy. Yeah. That seems like that's always happened. Right?
Yeah.
And I think it all points back to Astro love me, a consciousness connection to everything, right? We're not understanding. Maybe we're identifying UAP. Somehow it's wild to think about. I mean, over and over again, UAP, whatever it is, this is the stuff that people aren't quite ready for. They're just seeing tech. Wait, there's other things in the sky. Just wait till they realize, yeah, and they can kind of read your minds and they can kind of communicate that way, right? Because
Mhm.
every time, how many times experiencers said, I just knew when and where to look
Yeah.
over and over
Yeah.
and picking it up, right? And so hopefully now that we're getting to these tech data points, if we get to the experiencer anecdotal data points, which Valet and all these other people's talk about, they're still data. Maybe we can use all these separate and equally different things and pull stuff from them and figure out something, because right now we don't talk about experiences at all. And that's kind of silly, isn't it?
Well,
Mhm.
they do, but I do understand why they don't, and I think that, like I've told people before, they're hitched to the back of the train, but it's still connected to the train.
Yeah, no,
All
I
the
got you.
people they've got 75 years of stigma that they have to undo to get academics and scientists and medical personnel on board with this, so they don't lose their licenses and their reputations and all that. They have to walk before they can crawl, and it's very important what they've gone through. But if they can't get those academics and medical people on board with the nuts and bolts first to lead them down that progressive discovery process, then they're not going to get there. So it's unfortunate that we have to start with the nuts and bolts, but it's a natural progression to have to lead them down that path so they can understand it themselves at their pace, that they can accept it into their worldview. Because just because they're professionals doesn't mean they can handle it any better than the average person can, and sometimes even worse, because they have a PhD and they've learned things so that they believe are so compartmentalized within their worldview and institutionalized that has been their education and they're experts on. And then in some cases they find out that that's completely not true what they've learned. That shakes you to your foundations, and you don't want to turn loose to that very easily. We found that in the alternative ancient history community, that you have some of those ardent opponents that are history professors, archaeologists, paleontologists, all those people in these disciplines that had their entire careers based on this. They've written books on it. They've lectured on it. They have entire classes out there. They've got PhDs in it. How easy is it for them to relinquish that and say, okay, everything I learned, I found out today is bullshit, and now we've got to start from scratch. And all my students out there, I apologize, but I was misinformed too. So now we got to rewrite all the textbooks. That you can't do. Most people can't do that. They don't want to give it up. They may in private acknowledge it, and I'm sure they do, but they will not publicly admit it unless someone takes that first hit in their demographic.
What I saw is really embarrassing. I remember in the early '90s there was I think it was a 60 Minutes interview with John Mack from Harvard at a late. He was the one, he studied alien abduction and also the Ariel school incident. But he had some of his colleagues were on during this interview, and they were acting like he went crazy. He's nuts or something wrong with him.
Yep.
It's so embarrassing to see his colleagues saying that. And it's like, in my mind, you're stupid. You're the one who's crazy for you're not even considering it. You're not even like, he's at least like put himself out there at that time to study it because something is going on. They didn't want to go there because they just think they're outright, even though these people were psychologists and psychiatrists, professors at Harvard, colleagues of his, they didn't want to put their, they think he's crazy. They're trying to put him down. And
Also,
it's like in the old days, like there was some, when some doctors started saying that, hey, bacteria, you need to wash your hands before you do an operation. Some of them thought that was crazy. It's almost like the same. That's embarrassing to think that was how it was. And now you see that this is embarrassing too.
Yeah, and in the 1500s, they told the king, hey, if you take a bath once a month, it may help improve your lifespan. Like, you think?
It's just, I guess what gets to me, I'm a patriot, and I get while some of it is kept secret. So just an example, if you take anti-gravity, I know there's a couple different people that have talked about, I guess you would say, hold on a second. I keep coughing. Anti-gravity tech in the 1950s was kind of pushed down and put away. They talk about it for a reason. So imagine someone who shouldn't have had it. Imagine the terrorists back in the day. It's some kind of an anti-gravity drive. Imagine the weapons or what they could do.
Yeah.
I could see if it could be suppressed for that reason. The reason we compartmentalize is to keep things secret. It's not to keep them from us necessarily. It's from the, because if it goes to us, it goes to who? The
You can't
enemy.
tell your friends without telling your
And I'm a
enemies.
patriot through and through, and I get why people make decisions, but a lot of these decisions should have been made by at least our representatives. We've had a shadow government making these decisions, which should piss people off. What do they call it? They call it the military industrial complex. Is very real, and that's what's been running the show on this, which is kind of wild.
Or the Fifth Estate.
Yeah.
What other names they go by?
Fifth column. Well, they think they're the fourth branch of government, but the interview with Hal Puthoff during with Eric Weinstein and
favorite
Jesse Michaels, he stated that that there are material sciences that are hidden in aerospace corporations on behalf of the militaries and stuff that have reverse engineered some of this, and fundamental sciences that should have been shared with the rest of the community, but weren't, and they weren't all for altruistic purposes. Some of it was because they wanted to exploit the material profit of it with fame and fortune. There's a lot, there's trillions of dollars here on the line and a lot of power, and to ask them to relinquish that after 50, 60 years of institutionally dominating and cornering the markets on this, they're not turning loose that easily.
Yeah, and the cooperation between that and the Admiral Wilson documents from Dr. Eric Davis, right? So those basically, those documents there, those memos talk about exactly what we're talking about here.
I got a question for veterans, you guys.
I'm not a veteran, just so you know.
Oh, I meant for Robin Shen, sorry.
No, Jim was in the he was in the Salvation Army. It was totally different, though.
So someone asked, hey, the pilots who, this was on Twitter, as named Science Related, the pilots who were shot down, the 3 objects, would they have signed NDAs? It would be interesting to hear their accounts. They wouldn't have had to. They're in the military. All of a sudden I said, don't talk about this. Then Mickey later signed one, but literally, don't talk about this. You break that order, you're going to jail. So, and they're in the military, and that's my impression. What do you guys think?
Well, I've 20 years military service. No one's ever come to me and made me sign one. I'm not saying that it's never happened. I'm sure it has, but never happened to me. Then again, I've never seen anything. So, oh my gosh, look at this. Is this not the key? Oh, puppy's gone.
That's the key. That's the key, Shannon. You never saw anything. That's why.
Yeah.
Yeah. But how many stories have you heard of people that have been forced to sign NDAs, or like Jonathan that was taken up in a helicopter and threatened to be thrown out, handcuffed in a gurney, and tipping the helicopter with him and saying they'll kill him and his whole family if he talks? I'd say that was them asking him to sign an NDA with malice.
Not today, Satan.
She just jumped down from the cat. That dog is so cute. I can't stand it.
Typically, maybe I'm wrong, but I know the NDAAs are typically for the civilians that are in like executive positions or not necessarily in the military, right? Like they'll have them sign it, like someone who's in a position. Yes, contractors. Someone who's still a civilian working within the government because they apply, So that's my impression. But if you're in the military, I think your boss can just say, don't you ever say a word. And as long as you're in the military, you can't say a damn word.
Oh, come on!
Yeah, don't say it.
I'm really curious. What I'm really curious about is like, how was this power authorized back in the day? Like was it Truman? Was it Eisenhower? Was it a combination of them? Like somehow, somewhere down the line, way in the past, some kind of a power had to be authorized by some president. I could only assume it had to be. You couldn't have just started with the Pentagon. It had to be some president had to authorize this, and I think they took it over the top now because it's out of control. I don't think any presidents. I think some presidents aren't even briefed on this completely,
52 if at all. Landing, they speculate is when if there were any agreements made with non-human intelligences, or if a president was institutionalizing to not to keep this covered up, it would have been probably after 1952, especially because there is a lot of speculation that landing was the real artifact.
And I think it's a breakaway civilization that Richard Dolan talks about. I don't think they're coming from Zeta Reticuli. I think they're closer to us than we think.
Yeah, I agree. I think some well, the ancient megaliths are irrefutable that there are high-speed machined tool marks on them for any machinist and manufacturer in wood, metals, and whatever. It's easily identifiable. It's a foregone conclusion that the megaliths were built with high-tech equipment that we don't have at our disposal, and they're also able to temporarily soften stone and re-solidify it, and lift 6,000-ton blocks. So anti-gravity and basically the cold fusion that they're seeking the Holy Grail of now, that would be reflective of the same process that they use to soften stone and re-solidify it without chemically altering its chemical composition or breaking the quartz in it. So they're exhibiting an ability of room temperature superconductance in antiquity, and they're trying to rediscover that now. That's what led me into this in the first place, was from the physics aspect of looking into anti-gravity. I saw it in ancient history when I looked at the megaliths, and then when I saw this with modern UAPs, I'm like, it's the same technology. And that's why I'm here now. It led me, down that path.
And let me also add what we were talking about earlier, like the NDAs. They can sign, just anybody can be made to, but if you're in the military, all they have to do is give you an order. And you had talked about it a second ago. If this is legitly real and it happening, and they're actively having people sign NDAs, and they're taking the data and they're telling people not to talk about it. This is more than a go away cover up. This is the conspiracy theory of all, because this is what people talk about all the time. That people say government doesn't do that shit. They don't make people kill themselves. They don't do this over things. They did over this, and this is wild. And so as people wake up to what they've done to this, I think there's gonna be a lot of freaking I guess bills to pay.
There could be lawsuits. I mean, you're correct. If the truth ever were to be, total truth were ever to be revealed, there could be lawsuits and everything. I'll tell you what, and I've said this before, I'm at the point now where of course, I don't have nothing to file a lawsuit about, and I hope nobody else would either. But I'm at the point now where I would rather just, hey, let's just okay, tell the truth and we'll forget about, because I mean, the people who started this, I'm sure they're dead. Okay, this has been grandfathered in now.
What's the primary function of our federal government? What's its primary function?
To serve the people.
To serve the people, right?
Well, to protect.
Well, they could say, though, here's the thing, though. I know where you're going with this. They could say that there was good reason for it. They could say, well, this was a matter of national security. There's an extraterrestrial presence on this planet. We don't know what they're doing. We needed to keep this secret. That's what they could say. And that's how they can get away with it.
Classification is supposed to be only for sources and methods. In some instances of national security, it doesn't relate to that. But abductions and such, they could make the argument that when the United States found out that their people were being abducted and basically kidnapped, tortured, assaulted, that they were complicit with that. You can make a civil case for that all day long, that they'll lose hands down.
That's interesting that you say that, though. That's interesting, because just remember, if you remember the Wilson Davis memo, what did those guys tell Wilson? That abductions aren't real. So they're going to say, well, we didn't know about abductions. Maybe that was setting that up for, that's one of the things they have to, they were denying it back in 2002, 21 years ago.
They may not have known that they were real because it was so compartmentalized, and before the age of the internet, information flow was really compartmentalized, and you had to rely on data or credible testimony, and it didn't exist because it was so protected back then. It was such a biased and prejudiced bigot list of who gets information. They had to keep it compartmentalized by design. I do understand that some of it was classified and compartmentalized for legitimate reasons, and a lot of these dark silos that went dark, that didn't have, that eventually their handlers, for whatever reason, fell away. They had legitimate reasons for not coming forward, because who do you approach when to tell that, hey, okay, we are sitting on craft, we've got all this data, but who do you approach with that? You know, what commission? You know, where do you come in from the cold? Like a CIA operator that lost his handler. You know, there's not a good time to jump in on with that when you have so much pressure from people that you have peers in your military industrial complex that have profited from these technologies and such. There's a lot of pressure not to come forward, you know, because there are some people that were not compliant intentionally and they don't want to be found out. So, you know, it's going to have,
there's going to be lawsuits.
yeah, some people were innocent on it and threatened to not come forward, but the heads of these programs are breaking the law. And basically, I dare say that in some instances, it probably rise to treason.
Yeah.
So,
It blows my mind.
Yeah, I believe I heard Lou talk about this, about something to do with speaking with people and understanding their point of view. Right?
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. The CIA and the OSI dirty as hell on this. You know, altruism, I don't believe, and patriotism was it is probably for most. I'm not indicting the institutions, but key groups within them, factions. Yeah, it's a foregone conclusion.
There has to be a control group, though, or whether it's called Majestic 12 or whatever. There has to be, right? There just has to be something that controls this, that is where all the information, a place where all the information goes, where there's like so say 10 people, 12 people, whatever.
It's like a think tank.
There has to be, and of course a lot of the stuff is compartmentalized and like outside of that, but there has to be groups, there has to be teams, and like different kinds of teams ready to be on the go when something crashes and all that. There has to be that kind of, like, I'm assuming that they learned their lesson after Roswell. Okay, we got to get this stuff in place, and there has to be, right? There just has to be. And so who gave that group the authority? It's going to be those people in that group that are going to be looking at the biggest kind of trouble, I would imagine, once this comes out, if it ever does. If it ever does. It might not.
I'm under the impression
they might throw everything out. They might throw everything. They might destroy all the records so nobody could be implicated. And they might, what we're seeing right now, right, over the last 5 years, they could be going along with this. Okay, yeah, there's stuff out there. We don't know what it is. We don't think it's extraterrestrial. And all of a sudden, we'll have another Phoenix Lights incident where it becomes undeniable, because now we have these things, right? And so now it will become undeniable. If 1,000 people have cell phones pointing at a gigantic object, you know, then it becomes undeniable, and the military could say, well, we never knew what was real. Now we guess we do. They could just pretend that all the stuff in the past never happened.
Hal stated in that interview that when they asked him, are there better, more compelling videos, and he said yes. And they asked him, well, what kind of clarity are there? And he said, as good as you would want, which means that, you know, basically you can see the whites of their eyes. No disambiguity to it. You know, it's clearly not human what they're seeing, because Lou even inferred that there were occupants of a craft on one of his interviews that you could see within it.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I saw that interview. But that doesn't, just because he told us that, well, that doesn't mean we'll ever see that. I mean, I'm just saying there's a possibility that everything might get destroyed. They might destroy everything.
Because I think those were they are in the legitimate holdings now in the community, in the system. So the ones that are overseeing that in the classified arena, those are assets that are now within their domain, you know, domain wide, I dare say, and redundant. So those wouldn't be destroyed. Whether they ever see the light of day to the public, I couldn't say, but I think that there will be a lot more compelling videos come out. And I think that, like I said, with Congress-wide, after they got a classified briefing today, there are going to be leaks. They will not be able to sit on this. Somebody there, like they did, I mean, hell, if you see the Supreme Court where they leaked the Roe versus Wade, when you have a leak in the Supreme Court because they felt that it was that important, you're going to have a leak in Congress at some point, and they're probably going to give the White House X amount of time to come forward with the truth. before they do, because they want to tell their constituents, their family, they want to find out the answers too.
Mhm.
So until we admit this to the whole of public and get it out there, like the representatives and keep saying, just let it all out, because we need to have this conversation. They've been shadowing our nukes since the 40s. We need to figure out what the hell are they telegraphing. There's a lot of reasons why we have a need to know here.
I think they had the ability to shut it all down if they wanted to. They might be cataloging every nuclear silo, every nuclear missile silo, every nuclear plant we have on this entire planet. And who knows? They might be working toward a plan to just shut everything down all at once. Because I mean, let's look at we're pointing nuclear missiles at each other. A bunch of different countries are all pointing nuclear missiles at each other. We could destroy at the threat of Armageddon is hanging over our heads at every minute of the day since the 50s. And they notice.
They're addicted to data. They know everything that everybody says, every communication that's sent, that is persistently monitored and filtered. So they know what is going to be cause and effect. If one country does this, they're going to know what the other country is going to do. They know how they're going to respond. They have that kind of foresight. But I dare say, maybe there's the threat of nuclear war. That there's one component that I think is a concern with them. But even if they shut them down, unless they change their elements, that we get hit with an impact every 2,000 to 3,000 years on this planet, and we don't have the ability to contain a nuclear spill to that magnitude. We can't even contain Fukushima adequately. So how are we going to contain thousands of nuclear power plants and all these missiles and everything? If they get broke loose and start spilling over, we might survive the impact, but we might not survive the fallout. So it's just another speculation, but it is credible.
Yeah.
Mick. What's up, Mick? I'll say that I'm under the impression, just like the atomic age, if you want to keep secrets in the government, you have a civilian organization. The MJ-12 documents, they can be fake all they want, but there was some kind of organization somehow, because again, Christopher Sharp has said, he said 3 different sources tell him the Holloman happened. Okay. So that meeting maybe happened, right? The site there. Okay. Then you take all these different things. I've also heard that there were supposedly NATO organizations that were tasked with checking up on that they were following whatever treaties or whatever was going on. And there's body parts found from abductions that weren't supposed to be, that kind of thing. And I've watched interviews with some of these personnel. So the more that comes out, the more you start questioning the things that you once tossed aside because they sound a little wild, right? I guess it's kind of a filter thing. You just kind of got to pay, like you guys mentioned earlier, Christopher Sharp and Lou, and there's certain people I pay attention to specifically for a reason.
I used to think that, like, when you heard reports like abductees would say stuff like walking through walls. Like when I first heard that, I thought that's crazy. That can't be. But then when you do more research, you find out it's
a lot of them do it.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it's something that a lot of people experience and see. So
And
it doesn't
these
anymore. It doesn't
entities
sound
come
crazy.
through the wall too.
Yeah, coming. That's what I'm saying. Walking through the walls now.
If you get all their electrons in a coherent phase, it turns them into a superconductor, and then they can pass through walls and stuff and not touch any of the atomic structure of it.
Yeah.
So it's possible.
You were talking earlier, Shannon, about Preston Dennett, and I've been watching a lot of his stuff recently. And
watch all of it.
It's good. Yeah, I have. Yeah. Well, he there was a lot of cases where people heard sounds, and the sound that I heard that time when I was a kid, like this humming sound. It seems like, well, some people call. I always said it was a humming sound. It sounded like an electronic transformer or something. I don't know what it was, but whatever it was. But I'm wondering if was a flying saucer, because I was in the attic. Was a flying saucer hovering over the house? Did it create a passage through the wall? I mean, I have no idea, but it's just interesting that I'm now starting to find out that that's something that happens. It seems to happen a lot. Like it happened at Ariel School. Some of the kids heard a humming sound, a buzzing sound, like a swarm of bees or a transformer, and that's what I heard. I heard a sound like that.
Well, knowing that it was a creature from not around here, my guess is it's not a craft from around here either.
No, definitely not. No, I think that's whatever that sound is associated with with these alien visitors, because
It's
obviously other people had
ionizing
the
the
same
gases in
thing.
the atmosphere. Part of
The
it.
what?
Part of it's ionizing the gases in the atmosphere, and I'd say part of it was probably an artifact of the electromagnetic radiation from its shell itself, because it's creating its own closed system. Within a system.
Well, now the weird thing is, now in the 1994, the fishing trip with my buddy, when we saw that flying saucer up close, there was not one sound at all. There was nothing. I mean, this thing moved around. There was nothing, no sound.
We're dealing with different levels of technologies, because we can't assume that there's only one down there. That's short-sighted and one level of technology, because we've seen that there's all kinds of craft, all kinds of capabilities and intent. It's probably a wide spectrum and different levels of capability and intent. So, you're going to run the spectrum on it.
Yeah.
So what else is in the news, guys? Man, I tell you what, every time I turn around, Shane's got something different going on in your studio there. Dude, you're making me look bad. I can't be doing that shit no more.
I move stuff around.
Yeah, I got to put my toys in the background like you did there. It's like I need to
got
like
those in
blow up
Portland.
and just see if I can identify all the different like cameras and stuff like that. Yeah.
She's got a couple new books too. I went to Portland. They got a Pals there. It's like a block and a half bookstore. One of my favorite places to go. I got
Are you a veteran and you read?
The Threat, and then
Oh, wait a
what
minute, you're
I'm-
Air Force, weren't you? That's the reason why you read.
I was, brother. Air Force.
Yeah, he's not a Marine. You can
You
read.
got plenty of time and chair force to read those books.
I grabbed a book about Toby, Book of the Damned, and the abduction enigma.
I'm gonna bring you up. Let's take a look.
Enigma. I
Bam.
said enigma. Enigma. UFOs from Earth or outer space, about interdimensional UFO healings. And then this is actually a pretty damn good book too. I've just started it, so don't ask me what it's about. The Stargate conspiracy. A buddy of mine told me. So, yeah.
There you go.
What can you tell us about
love bookstores? Love bookstores.
One thing I think this is going to catapult the disclosure for the general population. I think it's going to be catapulted sooner than later now, because I think this is going to turbocharge it with what just happened. And that's going to cause a cascade of effects to where there's going to be a lot of people not coping with this new reality well. It's going to be such a abrupt paradigm shift. So that's going to fall right into the initiative that Ted Rowe and those others are initiating. Do you want to tell us about that, of what that's for and what their ambitions are?
Well, thank you, Rob. Let me
be relevant really quick.
Let me hit that softball out of the park with a home run, right? So I'm grateful as hell, actually. I just posted something on Facebook today about UAP Med. So Ted Rowe started an organization called UAP Medical Coalition, and it's an outreach organization. What we're doing is doctors, medical professionals, mental health professionals, and we're letting them know, hey, look this topic over again. The news now should help us quite a bit, but we're giving them kind of a go-to sheet. Like, you should be listening to Gary Nolan, Avi Loeb, people who are that are their peers that they can read, that they could kind of listen to, that they would actually probably understand, as opposed to someone coming in saying, check this out. I had Rob knows, because I actually had some trouble during my experience. One of the things I dealt with was I couldn't really offload my experience to my doctors, because someone who had struggled with PTSD and was trying to fix their life, I understood how crazy I sounded, and I was trying to not sound that way. And I also understood what it could have got me 3-day hold medication. So struggled for a minute. I happened to come across Ted Rowe, who literally was one of the people who saved my life, and I got to dump it. And because he's an experiencer, I realized, okay, something that's going on is real. So now I'm a part of this organization, and what we're doing is this. We're trying to make the topic known that there's an element of this, right, that is completely disregarded. And sorry, I got to plug my thing in. But an element that no one touches. 1 second, bear with me, guys. About to die. Anyway, so there's a little bit that's forgotten. PTSD from this issue. Most people don't think about it at all. So if you think about, if you've read Skinwalkers of the Pentagon, Jay Stratton, Axelrod, you saw his interview with Jeremy Corbell. if you ask me, someone who's experienced and his family experienced the things they have, someone who's experienced my things, doesn't mean it has to be an awful or bad experience. You can still have trauma from that experience.
All right.
But there's no one to go to offload that trauma and to pull you back from the edge. Because Rob, Shannon, and all of us know that this is really deep rabbit hole. And once you realize this is real, we said it earlier, you start wondering what else is. So without professionals, what do you have? I had UFO Twitter. I'm lucky I stumbled across you guys, Ted, Dick Butt, all these other people who did help me. Not everyone out there's that way, right?
Yeah.
So I'm grateful and thank you. I'm grateful to be in this. I mean, it's weird because I'm in a unique experience. I'm in a very unique situation. Because of my experience, I've been given the opportunity to help veterans, experiencers, recovered addicts, mental health advocate. And it's not lost upon me. Hell, I'm going to be speaking in Roswell in July. I have my own, I'm speaking there. I mean, how crazy is that coming from where I am? And my main thing, my veteran brothers and sisters, experiencers. And so the fact that Ted asked me to be part of UAP Med is probably, I have all these podcasts, which are, they keep me alive. I'm not joking, talking to you guys, talking about this subject, but that I'm all in because I know there's other people out there suffering too, almost ready to take their life because they think, oh, I fixed my life and I'm schizophrenic like me. I was there. I fixed my life. I got clean. I fixed everything and I'm schizophrenic. I was about to off myself because the rest of the world thought I was. I didn't know what UAPs were. So it's like, I'll do it. So thank you for mentioning that, Rob.
Yeah, the overlap, man, it gives you a unique position of not just being able to sympathize, but you can empathize. And when somebody has gone through a specific trauma and they can't find anybody that is a peer that has gone through similar, they can have people sympathize all day long and say, hey, I'm sorry you're going through that, but I can't relate. They can't help them. They can't do it, not sufficiently, because when you can't step into their shoes with them and say, I know what you're going through because I've been there, then you can't give merit to what advice they're trying to give you. They have no point of reference. So it's vital. And I think it is uniquely interesting that you have now all these cross platforms of getting past drug abuse and an experiencer and military PTSD. You run the spectrum of being able to reach multiple demographics and empathize where most people can't. So that in itself makes you a very valuable person for the rest of humanity to reach out to.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much for those words, Rob. That makes me feel good. I mean, compared to where I used to be, because I used to be a part of humanity you didn't want a part of, right?
Well, my son's dealing with addiction right now. I get it. I mean, it's a
and we're all human, and that's my goal is to try to get, because there's stuff that people don't talk about. Like there's other ways to get out of addiction no one wants to talk about, and things like that this gives me an opportunity to talk about, which is wild.
Yeah. Finding like I've got a friend that's Pierre Adele, and he's a very famous singer in UK and Europe and Russia and things. But he's a friend of mine. He was an addict once. He was telling me you have to develop healthy addictions to offset unhealthy ones, which means that if you have to get that natural high and off of something else to give you that, like adrenaline, like I did with fighting and combat and things and full contact fighting in the ring and such, the adrenaline you get from that, or drag racing, it's hard to find something in normal day-to-day life that equates to that. And you, even at that, you get to missing that, and you need something to replace that with.
I'm going to tell you something right now.
With drugs, but then you need to find something, like skydiving or something that's going to give you that rush without the drug.
Rob, you hit a nail on the head, man. This is how wild it is for me. So I was atheist, like I said before. What you found was my higher power. I was still sick in 2020 when I left Wounded Warrior Project mentally. I still had a lot of cravings and things like that. Obviously, fentanyl, and I was bad. There's pictures on Twitter that I posted. They're sensitive for a reason. I had some massive infections with IV usage. But when my experience happened, regardless of how terrible that shit was, all I did was focus on that. I'm going to figure this out. I know I'm going to research it. I started reading, learning, doing other things. That higher power, as wild as it sounds, I'm not saying aliens are my God. What I'm saying is that's what a higher power is when it comes to addiction. You're turning that energy, like you just said, you're all that stuff to something else, and became research and figuring out what was going on. Then it became helping other people, because as I did spaces, I met people like you, supported me and things like that. And I realized, man, there's not a lot of us who talk about this subject, who can be taken seriously, who are willing to look people in the eyes and say, hey, you should. So just standing on the shoulder of giants, you know. So I'm appreciative of you guys being a co-host. I love talking with veterans and stuff too, and being around here. So it's super cool because I don't have anybody near me that I talk to around it.
And other people, we're not minimizing people that aren't veterans that have PTSD.
No, we're not.
Most of my PTSD came from not being a vet. It was some other things.
Yeah.
And it is just as much, if not more. It's not exclusive.
PTSD
There is not a level
whatever.
of PTSD for vets that is higher than the PTSD for the rest of the population. From other
Trauma's trauma.
Yeah.
And I actually have
mine didn't come from 20 years of military service. Mine came from being sick.
No, I believe that in a heartbeat. I'll tell you right, trauma's so much trauma. I have a sneaking suspicion, along with other people that you can read about, that trauma may have something to do with experiences. Like sometimes I feel like my brain is a pulsing beacon saying, hey, look at me. Not like I'm special. Something's broke or is off. And so it's saying the wiring's just pulsing, right? Because on my days that I have really emotionally negative or positive days, or when I really see these things and record them. And I've always noticed it. Like if it's a bad day, I'll see and record them. Or if it's a really good day. So I wonder if my emotional spectrum, my brain's having
your cognitive ability is spiking that day.
Yes. And I'm wondering if
it's standing out above the status quo. It's spiking and it gets the quantum, collective consciousness's attention. Hey, we got one on the radar here. It's like a switchboard. There's one lighting up and they plug in,
Exactly what I think. So trauma is trauma across the board. Doesn't matter where you get it. It affects you, same but different. So I wasn't trying to minimize anybody at all.
Yeah, I know. And I just want to expand on that because I do know some people that try and say, well, I've not gone through things like you have. So my pain doesn't equate to yours. But I explain it to people, I'm in physical pain all the time, and it goes from mild to wild. So I'm used to being in that kind of pain. But somebody that isn't used to it, I've had some tell me, like my wife, that like my pain isn't anywhere near yours, and I can't imagine what you're going through, so I don't want to complain about mine. Well, for somebody that's their status quo, and here's how trauma works in PTSD, their baseline status quo, to the degree that it gets abjectly changed adversely, how high and how quick is the amount of trauma that they receive. So a person that's never felt pain that all of a sudden gets in a car wreck and wakes up in a body cast, their pain level is going to be through the roof. And how quickly they were traumatized from that and gone from being, well, you've seen it all the time in combat where somebody is the elite in health, and then all of a sudden they're in a wheelchair and only have one limb left. Trying to get past that paradigm shift that quick is very challenging. So, for somebody to say that, my pain doesn't relate to yours, if they are normally in zero pain, for a housewife, and then all of a sudden they break an ankle or something, but they don't want to complain because they know somebody else like me is in constant pain, their pain is far worse than mine because I'm used to it. They're not. So it's worse for them than it is for me to deal with. So, that's something I realized.
I agree. So I'll say that regardless of where you come from, we should always think about the fact that you never know what somebody's going through at that time. So I try to place it because like you made it a point to bring up trauma's trauma. And that is a good point. Because a lot of times people try to minimize their own, like I haven't been through, like you said, that you have, right? And it's not quite, it doesn't quite work that way. And this is silly. I have trauma, literal PTSD symptoms. The only reason I know this is because I've been through inpatient, chronic, wounded warrior care from my experience. I mean, completely symptoms related. You know how silly it is to go places and not look up and know why you're, and catch yourself, realize you're buried in your phone because there you had an experience. And it's just, while I'm not scared of them, that experience at the time before I knew what them was traumatic. And that's the moments that's in my head. So people can confuse the two and think that it has nothing to do with that. And so trauma is just trauma. It's going to imprint anywhere it can. So the cool part is, like Robert brought up earlier, UAP men, doctors that take this seriously. So, because once you have a place to dump it and help you connect the dots and figure it out, then you'll be all right. And that's what I'm suffering with. And it's so silly because I went to Wounded Warrior Care in Boston, that home base, and I'm thinking maybe I'll feel better if I just dump all my combat stuff and all the other stuff that I did in my life, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't the case. And here I'm sitting just feeling like and I went up to Portland and I actually ended up meeting a doctor. This is no joke. I went up there with the intention of finding a clinic for veterans, combat veterans, PTSD, a psychedelic clinic, because I signed up for Heroic Hearts to take it to South America for DMT. But I went up there because I know that they allowed it up there. I hadn't met one, nothing like that. Went downstairs one morning and run into one. And we start talking. He wants me to come through and help prepare it for veterans and get the word out and things like that. Other things like I had mentioned earlier, alternate cares, because the most important thing is it shouldn't be about what offends you if it helps someone. And morally, we all know there's areas that you don't go to, but I'm saying if you're going to tell someone don't do that, but it fixes you and you're not suffering like them, that's not good. Yeah. You can't tell yourself you're a human, right? You got to put yourself, like you said earlier, in other people's shoes at their lowest point before you say no.
Yeah.
Synchronicities, man. I don't know what you guys believe about that, but I'm only here because of them, even with you guys. And it blows my mind that I'm here on a podcast with you guys too.
Well, that's what Jim's here for, because what he went through with his experience, he wants to know what the hell that was in his room. I mean, he has been on this quest, ever since then. That's a recurring theme. He is compelled. He can't stop until he finds the truth, like you did. You weren't.
I just had to have him on the show.
Let me ask you this, Jim. So this is how I think, and all of this is intertwined, in my opinion. Paranormal, UAP, consciousness. I'm curious, what do you think about that? Like, I fall under the umbrella of Keel, Valet. Like, we don't understand it, but everything we see is fairies, ghosts, monsters, boogeyman, things in our room, whatever, is all intertwined. Or do you think they're separate?
You know what? That's the whole thing. I don't know. I guess my biggest thing is I don't know what the answers are. I just know that there's something going on here that we can't explain. I don't know what it is. I've had synchronicities. In fact, I've talked about them before. Strange things that have happened that just too much. It seems much more than a coincidence. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I've had three major things. I talk about the experience with the alien, and then years later, that was in 1977. Then years later, in 1994, there was, I was on a fishing trip with a buddy in the middle of nowhere, and basically a flying saucer showed up and then flew away. So I had that, and then I had something really strange happen when I was living in Hawaii in 2007. So I had. And I think it might have been alien related. I'm just not sure. I don't know. I just know that there's something here because I saw one of these beings. So I know that. And I know that there's, and I saw one of the crafts. So I know that these things are real. I know that what other people are saying is, for the most part real. Of course, you're going to have some hoaxers here and there. But what you're saying, is it all connected or something somehow? I don't know. I don't know what the answers are. I just want to, I don't think we're ever going to know, no matter what, I just want to get more answers. I just, I don't like the cover up. I'm sick of it. I want to see, that's the one thing on the bucket list. I want that thing to be.
We know it. The truth is we know it.
Yeah. Let's kick that. I want to get that off the bucket list here before I kick the bucket. That's all.
Yeah. I'm with you.
I don't know what else to say. I don't know the answers. I just know that there's something here. Because I experienced them. I saw them and I hear, I've done enough research now that, oh yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah, something's going on. But I don't know. It could be everything that's connected. I mean, maybe for all I know, maybe that thing was, that flying saucer I saw maybe it's been happening my whole life. I just don't know, and maybe I just don't remember. Maybe, I might be an abductee and I just don't know it. I don't know. I mean, it definitely one was in my room one time that I know of. After that, I don't know. Maybe they have the ability to, apparently they have the ability to make people forget stuff.
Yeah,
And
we need to do
obviously,
a-
there's some people among us for some reason that remember little bits and pieces on a regular basis, and which ends up causing them to, and also have lost time, which ends up causing them in turn to end up going to see their psychiatrist, and then they get hypnotized, and oh my god, it's happening all the time.
Yep.
We need to run an
Right,
MRI on your sinuses. We'll find something in there that they've been tracking
There
you
might
with.
be. There
Yeah.
might be. I mean,
Yes.
I might go to bed tonight and not even know. There may be, who knows? It'll be the humming sound. Everything will be there, and except I'll wake up tomorrow, I won't even remember anything. Like maybe that's what it was. That first time they figured it out. Oh, he might have woke up this time, but this is the first and last time. We got him now.
Turn up
Who
the
knows?
laughing gas.
Hey, I want to thank each and every one of you guys for spending some time with us today on the show. I really appreciate it, Jim. And well, I expect it out of you, Rob. But Shane, want to thank you too. I'm going to try to get everybody hats for the show, by the way. Also, I'm working on a challenge coin for the charity. So other than that, any other news or last words you guys want to say before we?
I'll repeat. I got those 5 tickets. If you go to my, was it Roswell UFO Symposium YouTube channel, as well as my Twitter page, or I actually added you guys, so it's probably on your feed somewhere too. So 5 Alien Con tickets, weekend tickets. So all you got to do is go in there and listen to the instructions, figure out what to do, because the money's going to Wounded Warrior, and I don't care how it gets there, whose campaign goes to the veterans, and that's what matters at this moment for me. So I got to pay back the step. I'm using them, $1,000, but I'm almost there, right? So
Yeah,
please check it out, guys. Thank you.
man, that's freaking awesome. Have to do this one again.
This was fun. It's nice to meet you too, Jim.
Hey, it was nice meeting you.
Hey, we need to do this more often. And as I tell Rob all the time, and it is the truth, we have the best seats in the house. We just sit back and watch this all unravel. It's going to be fun. I think this year's the year anyway. So
I
we'll
hope
see.
so.
We've got a lot of questions, don't we?
After this last week, I am fairly certain that Congress or the White House is going to come out very soon and make some announcements, because they are going to be forced to, because they can't afford the Democratic Party can't afford to have Biden drop the ball on this also, and it became another campaign reason of him not, the Democratic Party losing their asses in the next election, because he didn't come out with the truth on this also. They need a win somewhere to help gain some momentum. I don't think it's going to help them in the long run, but at least they can try.
All right, folks, that's it for tonight. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe and hit that notification for upcoming videos. Make sure you check out Jim's YouTube channel. Make sure you check out Shane. Where can they find you?
You can find me at Old Vet Symposium on Twitter, or you can also find me on YouTube at Roswell UFO Symposium, Mind Escape Podcast, as well as you can also find me at
No one
UFO
cares,
Man.
Jim.
And
No,
here.
Hey, I want to give you a plug, but my God, I want to take over my show, will you?
I have lots of time on my hands. I'm just trying to feel it.
Jim, where can they find you?
On YouTube, it's the Quirk Zone, and on all your podcast platform, it's UFO-extraterrestrial reality.
Not today, Satan.
All right. All right, folks, there you have it. And we'll see you soon. Everybody, all co-hosts, stick around till after show party. Later.
I'll take care, all right? Nothing but love for you. Nothing but love for you. You think they have any clue what's about to happen to them?
Oh, no chance in hell. Good night.